There's an interesting thing when men go through the process of a divorce. It's this huge ordeal, but I want to talk about the legal process of it. And for a men's group, a men's coach who's been doing this for 15 years, working with men and a lot of experience around divorce and custody and everything that goes into that, there are some things that you need to do legally that are musts. And I want to talk about it because we just got through three major court cases with our clients. They were successes, and I want to tell you why they were successes. And let me just tell you, every single one of these men started out with false abuse claims, sexual abuse claims, even claims of rape, claims of mental illness, drug addiction, and so on. And what allowed these guys to beat the case and then put themselves into a position where they could get what they wanted custody-wise and be great fathers, because that's the end of the goal. That is the end goal in all of this, is that I want you to have an amazing life with your kids. It starts with the legal process if you're there, but there's a long road after that, and these guys are set up for it. So let's talk about that on today's episode. So let's put this in perspective. Your wife leaves you and she kidnaps the kids, or your wife leaves you and she starts saying that you beat the kids, sexually abuse them, have drug problems and so on, and won't let you see the kids and is playing all these games. This is something that's super common. And what we hear in so much of the men's rights and sort of megaphone of what we hear on YouTube is a lot of bitching about that. But if you're in this situation, you have to act right away, and you need to act right away legally. Now, on the flip side to that, lawyers are sharks, and they're kind of the worst people and all sorts of this stuff. So we want to be able to find a good lawyer. So again, I see this all the time on YouTube comments and so on, and different men's rights forums and Facebook groups and stuff like that, saying like lawyers are just trash, or get a lawyer and get the shark. And this is all actually bad advice, because it's not coming from a lot of experience. It might be coming from experience from one man who had a case and he won it or lost it. But the interesting thing about what happens in our groups is we have hundreds of guys and thousands of guys who've I've experienced and helped taking this through. But at one given time, there's hundreds of guys who you have points of access where you can access this through. And also we have attorneys that come on and you could talk to and get advice from them. Although I just want to put it out there that when you're dealing with your case, it's your case, which is specific. And also when you're dealing with your state and your county, that's very specific as well. So these things vary. I want to talk about these three dudes, because one guy, he had his kids kidnapped and didn't see them for over a year. It was really bad, abuse claims. I'm sorry, not charges. And that was a big leading part of it. I'm afraid for my life. I'm afraid for my kids' lives. I'm afraid of that he's going to kill me or hunt after me and all these different things. And here's all the proof of why he's that. This guy now has full custody of his kids. He switched, obviously she was then determined by the courts to have kidnapped the children. So he has full custody and full legal rights over her. We've talked about that in a previous video of that situation, but that happened about a month and maybe a month and a week ago. This week we had two cases that were wrapped up by guys, and one started out with mental illness claims. There was some proof of that, and I want to talk about that as well. Abuse claims, neglect claims, and all these different things. But imagine that. It's like there was proof to a history of mental illness. And when I talk about mental illness, I want to put in perspective, there's like, if you have mental illness, even if you have committed crimes, there's ways to deal with these things in the right way. And this is important in this case. But that gentleman's case got wrapped up this week, and his hearing, when it came down to child custody. He gets standard visitation with some extra days and so on, and a second hearing coming up in 9 months. So that can sound disappointing, but for a guy who, abuse claims are being put against him, mental illness claims, addiction claims, and so on, and when there can be proof of some of the mental illness stuff, which man, can be intimidating as hell, that all got thrown out the window. And the judge is like, no, let's start and see if we can move up from standard visitation and so on. And then the last one got wrapped up yesterday. And man, amazing. It actually went to trial. And this gentleman had a situation where he had abuse claims. The family had a lot of money. He had no money. He couldn't afford legal representation, and abusing the child, abusing the wife, claims of rape and all sorts of just crazy stuff, and no way to defend himself legally, and just tortured. I mean, taking advantage of the whole family against him. He didn't really have anybody on his side, and he actually got an amazing deal. He was going for 50-50, and he got expanded standard visitation with some extra stuff in there as well. And every single one of the claims that were being made against him really got shut down. So we hear about the court system being screwed up all the time. And I want to make clear, if you're going to join that camp, you're joining the victim camp. Now, don't get me wrong, men get screwed all the time. There's guys in our groups that get screwed all the time in terms of the courts being unfair. But the greatest factor, and I want to cover this for you guys, that will be in that phenomenon of judges ruling against you unfairly is going to be your lack of preparation. You don't know what's going on. You hired the wrong attorney. You put together the wrong game plan, and you basically didn't get advice from a lot of people who could help you out in this, meaning your attorney, either sold you emotionally or you tried something unrealistic. And in fact, I'm going to tell you right now, on every single one of these cases, the kidnapping, the mental illness and drug abuse charges, the rape and family violence charges that were being put on in all those cases, every single one of those women hired attorneys that oversold them, at least from my opinion, from when studying the cases and seeing what's going on. Every single one of those attorneys bait and switched their client. And you don't want that to happen to you. All right. So that plays into a lot of things, is that when we move into this victim mode of men being screwed over by the courts, the number one factor in that is your lack of preparation. And that means you either went in it alone or you went in it with an attorney who gave you unrealistic expectations, which means you may not have been honest with them, which means you weren't interactive with the plan with them, which is why you need a men's group to go bust over all this stuff. I mean, we were instrumental. Look, man, the court case was fought by the attorney, but there was a lot. I mean, not two out of three of these guys had to switch attorneys within it, and there was a huge amount of advice and coaching that we added into that, and they would definitely tell you. One of them had to do with multiple regions, so meaning state and country and so on, where to navigate between attorneys and those types of things. So that's the number one reason why men get screwed in their court cases, is they're unprepared legally. Right? So they walk in to the attorney general's office or the courtroom or the moderators or in a deposition without the proper coaching, backing, and legal representation. Now, so many guys are going like, no, man, I did everything. Look, court cases are rough, and if you have an attorney and you don't know how to pick one, and they give you the wrong sort of advice or steer you in the wrong direction or give you unrealistic expectations, you don't know how to look for that. You don't know how to test for that. You don't know how to switch attorneys. You don't know any of that stuff. Man, expect that you will get screwed and taken advantage of by the court system. Now, the other factors that go into all of this is not knowing how the court system works. So this would lead into you listening to your friends or your family or gossip about how the court system works. And if you do that, you are again setting yourself up to be failed by the justice system in a huge way. It's massive. So the other thing too is every single one of these guys got the coaching that we generally give in our groups of how to handle your court case and really how to handle everything. Like if you're going through depositions or if you have to be, get some prep work or coaching in terms of how you're going to be able to answer questions when you're cross-examined and so on. And again, your attorney needs to take the lead on that, but oftentimes attorneys don't, which is why it's very, very important for you to be around a community and group that does that. But when you are entering into a situation and you don't know how the courts work, you start thinking like, well, she had an affair, or the kids are better with me because they like me better, or they cried when she left. And those things could be factors in it, but they're smaller tier factors and they don't determine what makes custody. In fact, in the court case where we had the allegations of rape and sexual assault and so on, what's interesting and what I can't believe is because the attorney on the other side, the attorney representing the mom in this case, who I just assume was baiting and switching the mom, she didn't have a case. From everything that we looked at, it was like, man, there's no reason why you should be denied custody, because the mom's intent, again, was to put this guy in prison and to never have him see the daughter and da-da-da, whereas my client was like, hey, let's see both parents and try and get in the right spot. So what's interesting is in this whole situation, they took an angle. A very skilled attorney, the mom's attorney, was attempting to make the point that there was like sexual assault towards the mother. And at a certain point, the judge was like, this has nothing to do with child custody. I mean, this is far-fetched. And they pretty much made their point of how ridiculous and made up and obviously rehearsed that was, and they really did make their point. But eventually, in the after the first day in the whole court case, the court trial, because trials go multiple days, trials and hearings, trials are more complex, right? There's more going on, and oftentimes there's a jury and so on. But during that, the judge was like, hey, I don't want to hear about this anymore. I don't even want to hear about rape or sexual abuse allegations, because this is about custody. This is about custody and how property gets divided. And this is not about, a criminal thing which you're trying to put out there. This is a perfect example of not knowing how the laws work for your specific case. And guys get mixed up by this. I just want to say this too, because when we're moving into cases that you have, like child custody, divorce, property, all these different things, you need to know what you're fighting over, and you need to know the specifics of that, of what you need to defend and how you're going to win and so on. I want to talk about one of the most important factors in this is that also in these cases, my clients didn't do much wrong. Now, there were DWIs or DUIs, depending on the state you live in. There was, like I said, mental illness, right? There was evidence of that and admission of that. However, what's important about this is usually when you enter into a divorce and custody situation and you have mental illness or maybe violence or drug use or things that might work against you in your specific case, you need to know that in that time of 6 months or 9 months or 3 months awaiting that trial or hearing or whenever you're going to be in front of a judge, you have time to amend those things. And man, let me tell you, in this case, I believe we had over 6 months of the mental illness and whatnot. And then with the DWI, there was like over a year of time in the case that we had before we showed up in front of a judge and a jury. And man, one of the best things that you could do, especially in a men's development group like we have here, is to be able to fix those things. So if it has to do with mental illness, are we getting treatment for that? Is there proof of it? Are there checkups? Are there lists? Is your therapist or mental health practitioner, are they putting in a checklist of your progress? Are there different reports that we could show the judge? Do we have, if we want to do this, and it depends on the situation in the courts and so on, do we have multiple therapists? Do we get a random one to examine you in different ways? And this is very, very important. These were the things that were done, so it was not an issue, right? The mental health or state of our client was not an issue because we took the right measures beforehand, and we're able to prove that the claims against him were exaggerated and so on, and these types of things. When it comes to things like DWI or addiction, are you doing your program, whether that's a 12-step program or a SMART recovery or something else? Are you involved in that? Is there proof of it? Is there something that the court respects and not just a bunch of friends witnessing and saying those things? We want that to be a very, very important piece of the puzzle. Now, I want to also talk about another factor that was huge in all three of these cases as well, which was that they didn't waste the court's time. And because of the negligence of the attorney on the other side, or maybe the bait and switch of the attorney on the other side, meaning it was a great attorney on the other side, but they just basically wanted to take money from their client and tell them that they were going to win a case and then push for a settlement, which is kind of what happened. And that's usually often what happens to men, and we can show you how to avoid that. But they wasted the court's time. So with my guys, we efficiently worked through what the court was looking for and how we could, say what was relevant in the case. But in the meantime, there were all these other time wasters like, oh, this is an issue, or here's this piece of evidence that matters that doesn't really matter. Here's this new thing is I'm an attorney, trying to look like I'm working for my client, but as desperate Hail Marys being thrown up and da-da-da-da. And there was a certain point in actually 2 of the cases where the judge was just like, man, just stop. Like you're wasting the court's time. You're disrespecting the court. And this is an interesting thing because what you have to realize in family law is there's a lot of BS, and these judges just see 50, 20, 100 cases a week, just a ton. They're overloaded with it, and it's ridiculous because it's like a broken record. They don't want to hear it. A judge does not want to hear a man who is angry and jealous or butthurt about something and making up claims and not knowing how the courts work or shouting. He doesn't want to hear that from a woman either. And it's interesting because when we as men have only 1 or 2 experiences in a courtroom and we hear our ex yelling and our judge sides with her, he may not be siding with her because of the yelling. And there's so much to this that you got to understand, right? That what was amazing for these 3 guys, and remember, none of them could really, who can afford an attorney, but one of them could not afford an attorney at all. And we were able to get that for him, and it was difficult and those types of things it wasn't easy. But they were in a spot where the benefit of their court case so much had to do with they were okay with compromising a little. They were okay with knowing that a win for this was clearing their name, not being an abuser. A win for this was getting time with their child, which again, all of them compromised a little bit. And I would even say the person who has full custody, 100%, there were even compromises in that are massive. But with that whole thing, the overall vision is like, how can I be a great dad for my kids in the long run? How could I be a great dad for life? And usually that isn't getting 100% your way. Usually what that is stopping whatever damage coming your way and then being able to work in a good place where you have your own mental health and empowerment. So what these guys walked away with, all 3 of them, is empowerment in feeling that they're good, they're great fathers, and they could focus in amazing ways of how to build their life better. Now, did they get 100% what they wanted? None of them did. And I'm just going to tell you right now that any time where there's a case where the mom or the dad gets 100% what they want, that's never good for the kids. That's like, to me, a step above foster care. And of course there's different situations, but when you get things like cut a parent out or give unrealistic child support, alimony or whatever, and you topple them and you get to celebrate afterwards, usually that's not good because that lopsides the family. At some point we want to be kind of like even, as parents, and eventually over the course of years that will happen. And again, what I just really want to point out, in all of the coaching that we do, it's lifetime or it's for years and years and years. I mean, we've had our online communities for 12, 13 years. And in that time, like there's guys from those calls 13 years ago that are still on our courses and programs of working with men and so on. So the betterment and the improvement of what you have and where you go with all of this stuff in men's development is really never ending. So we just want to get you to a spot legally where things can be best for everybody. That being said, guys, a lot of stuff happening court-wise. I really, want to spend a lot of time in the next couple months pointing out how the court systems work and a lot of the myths that the manosphere and all these different things and like men's rights guys that get too hysterical, screw up in it, because you can win, you can do good, and part of winning, there's a compromise. But man, if you have problems, they can be amended, and it's kind of common sense, but it's very difficult emotionally. And then when you get into the legal splitting of hairs, it can be very, very difficult with the stress of, it's super stressful, the laws and the different laws in different counties and so on. And then the stress mixed with the breakup and the revenge and the personal development is very difficult to manage. So I just really want to encourage you guys, if you're going through this, don't sit on the sidelines. Think about the investment in something like Men's Development Excellence, which is really where I would say to start. It has the backing and the calls and the community to back you. But if you can't afford that, and you want to look at something like the Rising Man, that does not have the same community support level and the calls and expertise, but it's a good place to get you where you need to get started. At the time of recording this video, it's $20 a month. It could save you thousands. I mean, like these guys literally saved, we're probably talking about in the hundreds of thousands of, if you combined all three of these cases together, just with the monthly payment of it. Some of them signed up when MDX was $79 a month or $89 a month, but that is going to change your life in massive ways. And so for 6 months or a year of that, and guys always stay in it because they enjoy it so much, man, do yourself a favor and get the coaching and the community that you need that will help you set up your life for the rest of your life so you can be a great dad for your kids. Anyway, check out the links down below, leave comments and so on. One thing I always tell guys is that I don't care or want to have interaction or adoration from people I don't know. I'd much rather have you guys get to know me and have a personal experience and relationship. So leave those comments, get to know me, follow me on YouTube and Instagram and the Facebook groups, TikTok, all the links are down. All right. Have a good one, guys. Stay strong.